Today we're going to talk about proportion. So this unit word is the ratios and proportions unit. We've talked about ratios. Now we're going to talk about a basic proportion, which is going to be used pretty much in every lesson moving forward in this unit. So what is a proportion? A proportion is an equation that states that two ratios are equal. Okay? So ratio, and we're looking at these in terms of fractions. So for example, if we have the ratio 3 to 4, right, or the fraction 3/4, that is equivalent to 9/12. 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 3 is 12. They are equal to each other. Or if we had something like 4/2, even though that's improper, that would be equal to 8/4. They simplify to the same ratio. If we had 5/15, that would be the same as 15/45. These are equivalent ratios, and when you set them up into this actual equation, 3/4 equals 9/12, that is a proportion. So we use proportions to kind of solve problems, but how does that work? How are we able to do that? Well, if we have this set up that we say this ratio is equal to that ratio, and this forms a proportion, I want you to highlight your diagonal. So if we have one diagonal here, and we have another diagonal here, okay? These are what we call our cross products, or you might hear me refer to it as diagonals. Okay? So this right here is one of our cross products or diagonals, and this one in pink is another one. So we kind of have two sets of those. So the cross products, or the diagonals of any proportion, and if you think about the word product, that means multiplication, should be equal. So that means if I multiply these two together, it should equal these two multiplied by each other. So if we look at it here, and we look at our two diagonals, right? We've got our diagonal right here, and we've got our second diagonal right here. We should be able to multiply those and see that they are equal to each other. So our yellow diagonals, 4 times 30, should equal the pink diagonal, 5 times 24. And I'm going to kind of highlight these so we can see we've got our yellow diagonal and our pink diagonal here. Well, if we calculate 4 times 30, you get 120. Remember that you can use a calculator for this unit. And if we multiply 5 times 24, we also get 120. They form a proportion, they are equal to each other, those cross products are equal. We can use this idea to actually solve for unknowns. What if we're only given 3 of the numbers instead of 4? We can solve for the 4th one based off of this idea that those proportions are equal. So the first thing that we do is we multiply the two numbers that are diagonal from each other and divide by the number diagonal from the variable. So here's what we're going to do. First off, we're missing a number here, so I'm going to give that to you. And then we're going to highlight the two diagonals. So I've got one diagonal in pink here. I've got my other diagonal in yellow here. So basically we're deciding between these two, my pink and my yellow, which of these diagonals has two numbers in it. The pink has 8 and 25, the yellow has x and 40. The diagonal that has two numbers in it is the pink diagonal, because the yellow one has a variable. So the diagonal with those two numbers, we are going to multiply these two numbers. 8 times 25, which equals 200. Now step 2, looking at our other diagonal, our yellow diagonal, is we're going to divide by the number that's in that same diagonal with the variable. So we've got x is part of the yellow diagonal, 40 is the other part. So I'm going to divide by 40. And that equals 5. So the value of x should be 5. Okay? If you want to double check your work, you certainly can. Work backwards. 5 times 40, is that going to give me 200? Yes. Okay? You might have been able to look at this right away and say, okay, 8 times 5 is 40, so 5 times 5 is 25. Sometimes it works out nicely like that. We are practicing this actual process because it's not always nice and easy numbers to work with. All right, number 2, we have 3.2 over 4. So again, I'm highlighting my 2 diagonals. I've got one diagonal here in pink, my other diagonal here in yellow. So which of my diagonals, the pink or the yellow, has 2 numbers in it? The pink has 4 and 2.6. The yellow has 3.2 and n. So the one with 2 numbers is the pink one. So we have 4 times the other value, 2.6, equals 10.4, 10 and 4/10. Okay. Now we look at the diagonal with the variable. N is in the yellow diagonal. I'm going to circle the number that's in the same diagonal with it, and that's what we're going to divide by. So 10.4 divided by 3.2, we get 3 and 25 hundredths. So the value of n is 3 and 25 hundredths, 3.25. Okay, let's look at another example. N over 15 equals 24 over 16. Again, first step, we're highlighting our 2 diagonals. Which diagonal, our pink diagonal or our yellow diagonal, has 2 numbers in it? So in the pink we have 15 and 24. In the yellow we have n and 16. So our pink diagonal has 2 numbers. So we're going to multiply those. 15 times 24 equals 360. And then the diagonal with the variable, the yellow one, I'm going to circle the number that's in that same diagonal. That's what we're dividing by. So 360 divided by 16 equals 2.25, or 2 and 25 hundredths. So the n, our variable, equals that value. All right, one more, and then we're going to have you try the U-tries. So I'm going to plug in the number 3 here, and then following our first steps, highlight our diagonals with the 2 different colors. Which diagonal has 2 numbers in it? We've got y and 8.4 in the pink. We've got 12 and 3 in the yellow. So the diagonal that has 2 numbers is our yellow diagonal here. So we're doing 12 times 3, which is 36. And we're dividing by the number that's in the same diagonal as the variable. I'm going to circle this. That's 8.4. That gives us 4.29. So the value of y is 4.29. All right, we want you to try these 2 proportions on your own. So for number 1, plug in 10, and number 2, plug in 8. Go ahead and try that on your own.